Welcome in, everyone. Leafs Lunch on TSN 1050. It's Julia Tocheri and Mike Distefano with you on this practice day for the Leafs. They had the day off yesterday, stayed in Tampa after their big overtime comeback victory.
You think they partied a little bit? You think they took it deep?
Well, no, I don't. Do you?
I don't know. Like in the
Took
regular
it deep,
season,
definitely no. 2 beers post-game.
couple pops.
3 beers post-game. A 6-pack, I guess, if you're sweating as much as the average NHL player. And I guess I was doing that on my body weight and how many beers I could have.
I was gonna say 2 beers. That's not a whole
2
lot
beers
for
after
those
a hockey
fellas.
game for me is enough to have me like dancing out of the Canlan York. But I'd imagine an NHL player probably has a little bit of a higher capacity. I don't know. Interesting question.
Well, because it's their business, business-like mentality. You heard, Matthews after the game coming out saying, the fourth one's the hardest to win, right? The
Yeah.
job's not done, so don't celebrate, right? But, if they had the day off the next day, I'd imagine maybe, and they stayed in Tampa, in Florida for that extra day, like maybe they did go and have a little bit of fun that night just to blow off a little bit of steam and celebrate. I'm sure, taking it deep, maybe a little aggressive there, but I'm sure they had themselves a bit of a time, perhaps. I don't know. The playoffs are a different beast.
I know. I heard O-Dog say yesterday on Overdrive something like, then they'll have a chance to, if they win Game 5 at home, they got a chance to floor it. And I was like, oh, I'm interested to see. I wonder if they actually would floor it if they did win Game 5, which is a whole hurdle in itself.
It's funny you mentioned that. So I was out for dinner last night with a couple of buddies, and they were talking about how the place is going to be insane, like downtown Toronto. The one guy was saying, oh, I want to go to Maple Leaf Square. Like, what if they actually win? Like, there's going to be a party in the streets. And I'm thinking, it's one round. But then again, there probably will be somewhat of a party in the streets.
Listen, it's warranted.
If they actually win Game 5.
I know it's pathetic. The rest of the hockey world's going to laugh and point and say whatever they want, but it is fully warranted if the Leafs get out of this and win on home ice in Game 5.
If baseball teams can pop bubbly after every single round,
Totally.
I think Leafs fans specifically, can celebrate if they finally get through the first round and actually do the thing that has eluded them for 19 years.
Yeah.
I think there will be some sort of party. It's not going to be, like when the Raptors won. I don't think that the Gardener is going to be completely backed up and everyone's going to jump out of their cars.
No, man,
that was
every
a wild
time the
situation,
Raptors
by
won
the
a
way.
round, I feel like there was a decent.
There was
the
a buzz,
more rounds they
right?
won,
Like
the
King
more...
West will be vibing. I
Yep.
think people will be downtown because the game is at Scotiabank Arena, so the fans are going to be down there anyways and coming out of the bar after the game. The Thursday, a little thirsty Thursday action. Like there will be some libations will be had after the game, but I'm curious, like, will it be, a little extra special?
Not a little, a lot.
They won a round.
I think it'll be a lot. I
Yeah.
honestly think, and again, point, laugh, make fun of Leafs Nation, but it'll be well worth it. Lance Hornby also pointed out this morning, it's not just the 20-year won a playoff round drought that they have the opportunity to exercise tomorrow night. They also haven't won a series in 5 games in 60 years.
Wow.
Yeah, as well as change the narrative of the rest of their recent playoff history. Leafs should want to come out blazing Thursday for the chance to rest a few days before the next series. Leafs last won a playoff series in 5 games exactly 60 years ago.
Crazy. 60 years.
We can add that to the Demons checklist.
Winning series in 5. There you go. Although they haven't lost a lot of 5-game series in the past. So
No,
I don't know
that's
if I can
true.
put that on the checklist. But, like tomorrow, to win that game, it honestly, they're going to have to come out with their heads on fire. Like I look at last night and I see the game of Edmonton. And, that game, both Game 4s between the Oilers and Kings and then Leafs and Lightning was very similar, where one team got off to a really good start, really hot start, and they were up big. And then the other team came back and won the game in overtime 5-4. Like, very similar scripts.
Yeah.
Toronto was much more
Much more
because
Toronto.
it was a lot later in the game where Edmonton kind of chipped away at it. But regardless, it was both sides down big early and then rallied to win in overtime. But what Edmonton did was they used that momentum. They followed it up with a really good performance out of the gate last night. And they were able to really carry that and win 6-3 and take a 3-2 stranglehold on that series against LA. Toronto's got to come out with the same intensity, the same level of urgency right from puck drop, because that's been a big problem with this team, right? You look at all 4 games that we've played so far, outside of Game 2, they've really slept through the first period of each of those other 3 games.
Yep.
Like the first period in game 1, arguably their worst period all season. I mean, I don't think that's even much of a stretch. They really sleptwalked in game 4's first period, and then in game 3, again, not an overly stellar first. So that's going to be super important, I think, for the Maple Leafs in game 5. Take a page out of Edmonton's playbook where you don't allow the momentum that you gained at the end of game 4 to be cut short by coming out and laying an egg again in the first.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of conversations about momentum and how much it really matters in the postseason. I still think that momentum matters. Like, you saw the way the Oilers came out, to your point. Connor McDavid sprinted. I know he always does, but it was highlighted last night the way he sprinted out onto the ice for warm-ups, and I know Mitch Marner kind of has a similar pregame warm-up routine. They've got to come out that way tomorrow night. They haven't been good to start games. Game 5 tomorrow night, home ice. There's pressure on the Leafs to just close this thing out because Tampa's wounded right now, and I know the extra day probably benefited Tampa more than Toronto.
I think so.
When it comes to that momentum that you were just talking about.
Well, it just gives it allows things
Tampa's
to settle a little bit,
too.
but I think it's more the injury thing. You allow those guys to rest. The Hedman Point, obviously, still probably reeling from the situation in game 3, and there's a couple other guys that are banged up, so I think that those guys getting an extra day certainly would benefit them. And, Toronto, though, in order to really, take back the momentum is to have that strong first period. Like, that's kind of how they're going to be able to just plant a seed of doubt inside Tampa. Like, it's got to be there already, but if you can go out there and dictate things in the first period, you look at game 2 and how they shot out of a cannon there. They ran away with the game. Now, I get it. Victor Hedman was not there that night, and Victor Hedman in the lineup just completely changes things. Like, when he's on the ice, despite being right now at like 60, 70%, he's still winning 65% of the expected goals when he's out there on the ice. It's insane what that guy's doing.
I'd love to know what's actually ailing that man.
I don't know.
We'll hear after the fact that he's like, yeah, I've got gunshot wounds,
torn groin,
something crazy.
Like, it is wild. I remember, who was it? Remember Sean Couturier played on a torn ACL?
Oh,
a few years ago. Maybe
well,
it might have been the bubble year, actually. That was insane. Guys, Victor Hedman played with a torn meniscus 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When he went through and won a Stanley Cup. But he's like,
Draisaitl.
I'm gonna work through it. We're gonna get through it. Draisaitl.
Yep.
Yeah, Kadri come back last year with that club after he broke his hand. Like, dudes are playing through a lot of stuff in the playoffs. And I'm sure there's some guys who are banged up as well here in Toronto that we just don't know about yet. Like, it's the playoffs. Everything's kept tight to the chest and whatnot. But game 5 is gonna be that's gonna be big because if Toronto can win that series, it'll give them a couple days off to really rest up ahead of most likely going to be Boston. They'll have an opportunity to put the Panthers away tonight. But that'll be big. Like, if they can get through this game and not have to worry about going back to Tampa for game 6 and then, oh God, a do or die game 7 where it never goes well for the Maple Leafs.
You just want to avoid that this year. You really do. That would really constitute as flipping the script because we've said it. I heard Hazy B say it again yesterday. Games 1, 2, 3, 4. Even 5, generally, not a huge issue. It's game 6 and game 7. Let the demons come out of the rafters.
So I'm curious to get your opinion on who you think there's more pressure on, Toronto or Tampa in game 5. Like, the easy answer, I guess, would say Tampa, because if they don't win, like, they're eliminated.
They're literally out.
But I don't know. For me, I feel like there's more pressure on Toronto to come out of the gates and win that game than Tampa Bay.
Especially since they haven't been the better team in a lot of the series.
Yeah.
I like the way MJ said it. He said game 3, they stole. Game 4, they took.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see them just come out with a complete effort to really cement that seed of doubt that's probably already in Tampa Bay's head. And let's be real, was maybe in Tampa Bay's head. I saw a Tampa Bay beat reporter tweet out something like the Tampa's 1-8 or something in their last playoff games, 1-7 in their last playoff games, dating back to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. Like, it wasn't a very close Stanley Cup final last year. So that's got to be weighing on them. The way this series has gone, there has to be doubt in that. No matter how much of a championship mindset Tampa has, like, there has to be doubt in there. And I do feel like there is more pressure on the Leafs to make sure that they just snuff Tampa out tomorrow night. because they get to 6, they go to home ice in Tampa. Oh man, I don't want to watch.
No, I mean, like, I know they went in there and they won 2 games in Tampa Bay, which is
Absolutely,
something
absolutely.
that we didn't expect to see happen, but obviously it was a very nice welcomed surprise.
That's another angle of it
but
too, right? Because we're sitting here saying, man, there's so much pressure on these Leafs to win in Game 5 because they haven't been able to win in Game 6 or Game 7 in the past. But I guess to their credit, they've done a few things this postseason already that we haven't seen in them in the past. So
Yeah,
it's not me saying like it's over if it goes to 6 or 7.
no, of course not.
But there definitely is more emphasis.
There is more emphasis to close out the game and just close it out so that you don't have to have those. Like, Leafs Nation just doesn't need that type of nerves running through their veins on Saturday. Like, let's just enjoy
Everyone
Saturday
is so tense.
and not have to be worried about a Game 6 in Tampa where it's like, okay, if they don't win this, it's down to a do or die again here in Toronto. Sheldon Keefe was speaking yesterday, did a Zoom call. I guess on the day off, they do Zoom calls, not in-person media, which is fine. But Sheldon Keefe, this was his message to the team preparing for that closeout game tomorrow.
Really, for me, it's just going to be about the focus that we've got to prepare to win one hockey game, one very challenging hockey game. And that's really it. Anything else outside of our preparation and then our execution when game time comes is a distraction. And it's on me as the coach and our players individually to eliminate as many distractions as possible and keep the focus where it needs to be.
Yeah, so I mean, like, Sheldon Keefe, he's got his team dialed in, and they got to be focused to go to get going right out of the gate. Interestingly, it looks like practice is now officially underway. They got on the ice about 10 minutes or so ago. Some notes starting to come out. What type of jersey do we have Michael Bunting in, Julia? Because that's the big question that we have. To play or not to play Michael Bunting? That is Sheldon Keefe's real big decision he has to make ahead of Game 5.
Okay, let's break this down, AB. We got some time on our hands before we have James Merle on in about 10 minutes here. So yesterday we had Chris Versteeg on, and he talked a lot about Sheldon Keefe and how Sheldon Keefe has evolved as a coach in his time as a Maple Leaf, how he's been doing as much learning, these learning lessons that the Leafs have been doing throughout these past, he hasn't been involved in all 7, but the past,
4 years. He's going on his 4th playoff run.
Bubble. So he's been learning those scenarios too, to his credit. Chris Versteeg yesterday felt very strongly that Sheldon Keefe should put Michael Bunting back in the lineup. And his reasoning I found pretty interesting. He tied it to Nazem Kadri when Nazem Kadri was suspended and they elected not to. They have an opportunity in his mind to kind of rewrite the past almost.
Yeah,
and putting Michael
the Kyle
Bunting
Clifford
back in.
one was one that he was using
Right.
last year, where Game 1 he gets that boarding call and then gets the suspension and then didn't find himself back into that series. And he felt that Kyle Clifford, they should have put him back in. And maybe this is a similar situation, and he has an opportunity to right that wrong. That was kind of the point that Chris Versteeg was making, and that's, kind of the learned lessons that he believes. But I don't know. I don't know if I agree with putting Michael Bunting in, though.
Exactly.
Like, I'll be honest with
There's
you.
a lot of people, because why mess with a winning roster? They're 3-0 without him.
Yeah.
That's a fair assessment, too.
They're 3-0 without them, but then on the other side of the coin, they've also played poorly in 2 of the 3 games.
I could talk myself into either direction here.
Do we have any clues at practice today?
Yeah, let's chat about this.
This is where we can kind of maybe glean some information from where Sheldon Keefe is thinking.
Wrong, because unfortunately, Sheldon Keefe is no longer playing checkers. The man is playing chess when it comes to his lineup card, when it comes to the way he's conducting himself in the media, when it comes to not making his goalie available to chat anymore because if Vasi's not talking, neither is Sammy. Now, nobody's wearing an extras gray jersey, not even Wayne Simmons. Everybody's either got a top 6 blue jersey on, notably Matthew Nyes wearing a top 6 blue jersey, but all of Michael Bunting, Zach Aston-Reese, Wayne Simmons, and Sam Lafferty are wearing bottom 6 white. So he's not tipping his hand as to whether or not he's putting Bunts back in, at least not as of now.
So I will look at that as a clue, though.
Oh, okay, Nancy Drew, go off.
To me, that says he might not be playing. And that's just based on my preference, where if I'm going to put Michael Bunting back in the lineup, it's not going to be in a bottom 6 role. It's going to be in a top 6 role.
Yeah.
So if he were to be back in the lineup, he probably would be in a top 6 sweater. So for him to be in a bottom 6 gray, or white, whatever color the bot. I think it's white, right? That might signal to me that there's mind games being played here. But ultimately, if you're out there for practice, you probably want him, who hasn't really played the last couple of days or few games here, probably would have him up with Matthews and whoever he's playing with. And the fact that he's in a bottom six, maybe he's not going to play.
Yeah, and let's be clear, the mind
Although
games
that
are
could be
not
the mind
with...
games too. I mean, realistically, that could be it, where it's like, I'm going to make you think that A, B, but really you're going to come out tomorrow and he's going to be in the lineup in the top line. And that is part of the mind games here that he's playing. But
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, let's be clear, Sheldon's not playing mind games with the players, because the players could very well already know who's playing and who's not.
No,
He's playing the mind games
Tampa.
with us
Tampa
and with
us.
Tampa.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Like Michael Bunting, I would assume he knows right now whether or not he's playing tomorrow.
Me too.
I would assume Bunting is well aware of the situation. I don't think that we'll see. I don't know. I don't expect to see him in the lineup tomorrow. For me, he doesn't fit on the fourth line. And you look at the fourth line, the way they're deployed, they're very defensively responsible. Bunting is just not that. So you're not going to put him in your bottom six.
Yeah, MJ was saying the same thing yesterday to the OD guys.
Yeah.
The same point that you were making about the way that Sheldon Keefe uses that line. And Sam Lafferty has taken some heat in the series so far, so I can understand. And that was the first person I pointed to, too, in terms of who you could take out. However, I don't know if what we've been seeing, what you can just look at Sam Lafferty and see isn't necessarily representative of his whole game.
No, and realistically, you could take Sam Lafferty out and put Bunting in, but it's not a complete one-for-one swap in the lineup. Like, if you're taking Lafferty out, you're changing your entire lineup, because then you're putting Bunting either on the first, second, or third line, and you're probably dumping Tocheri down to your fourth line, and then from there, okay, well, is Bunting going to be on the first or second, and then you're moving guys down? You're rearranging your entire lineup, and a lineup that has won you 3 games in a row. Despite how they've got it done, they've gotten it done.
Nobody asks how.
Right? Exactly.
Well, sometimes they do.
But
not right now.
At the end of the day, they're up 3-1, and they're 3-0 without Michael Bunting in the lineup. They're 0-1 with him in the lineup. At the end of the day, I think Game 5, you go into it. Sorry, Bunts, but we're just gonna roll with what we got working right now. Things don't go well in Game 5. Game 6, you're back in for sure. But we're just gonna give it one more game and kind of see what happens. And if they win Game 5, I bet you he's in there Game 1 against whoever they play in the next round. Most likely Boston.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I would play this situation. But I'm not Sheldon Keefe, and Keefe isn't really telling us exactly what he wants to do. And to his point, I mean, it probably benefits him and benefits the team to keep not only us guessing, but Tampa guessing as well. All right, let's take a break, because we got James Myrtle coming up on the other side. Brian Hayes, Hazy B, going to join us in the 1 o'clock hour as well. I'm Mike Distefano with Julia Tocheri. Listen to Leafs Lunch here on TSN 1050.